encourage your soul, enlighten your mind, and empower your faith. This is the Light Network. If you want to be a serious Bible student, a successful servant, and a powerful preacher, this is the podcast for you. Hello and welcome to Preachers in Training. My name is Robert Hatfield, and this is the podcast on which we discuss all things preaching and ministry. On this edition, we're going back to the listener-requested mailbag, and on today's episode, we're discussing dealing with difficult brethren. This is an interesting topic. Here to help me discuss it is Jon Mitchell, who is the preacher for the East Main Church of Christ in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, formerly of Calhoun, Georgia, and formerly before that of Duncan, South Carolina. And I think maybe you've been on this podcast in each of those works. But anyway, welcome back, brother. We're glad you're here.
It's great to be here.
How's everything at East Main?
Oh, it's great. Great congregation.
What a neat congregation. Yeah, and the history of that place is so cool, too.
Oh, yeah. It's I think James Garfield spoke there one time.
Isn't that wild?
Yeah. It's amazing.
I love sometimes on social media, some of the group there will post the pictures of the church building from back in the day. And of course, you can just look at the building and tell it's been there a while.
Mm-hmm.
It's a really neat place. Yeah.
Great congregation.
And I was going to say, not just because of its past, but no doubt because of its present as well. Yeah, that's really cool. Dealing with difficult brethren. Thanks for agreeing to come on to talk about this.
No problem. No problem.
We've all been there, and I think I maybe mentioned to you, and maybe I've got this coming up later in our interview thoughts together, but sometimes we are the difficult brethren that other brethren are dealing with. So we'll consider this with an ounce of humility and go from there, right?
I have to say that it is always good to examine ourselves.
Yeah.
2 Corinthians 13 verse 5 tells us to do that. And a lot of times we might need, like David needed a Nathan to say, you are the man. And that wasn't, oh, you're the man. No, that was, you're the problem here.
Yeah.
And I think it's good for preachers to, they need to be open in case a well-meaning, sincere elder or member of the congregation says, hey, look, you need to consider this. We tend to not wake up in the morning and just say it's going to be a great day because I'm going to focus on all the things that I am doing wrong.
Right. Yeah. That's true.
I think Paul said to the Corinthians, if we judged ourselves rightly, we would not be judged. And the implication of that being, well, God's judging you because you're not judging yourself rightly. You're making a mistake here.
Right.
And when you have Sunday after Sunday, when you have brethren come up to you either sincerely or just because, that's just what they do. They shake your hand. Great job. Great lesson.
Mm-hmm.
That was great. And you hear all these compliments. It can be very easy to get pride.
Yeah.
And
after a while, you might start believing them. Yeah.
And if you study the Bible a lot, and so you correctly surmise that, well, between brother or sister so-and-so compared to me, I'm the one that knows a lot more about the Bible than they do. So of course I'm going to be right and they're going to be wrong. Well, that's Satan targeting you. And we need to always be open to the fact that we might just be the problem. Whatever criticism comes our way, there might just be a grain of truth in it. It might just be a whole sand pile of truth on it. It just really depends. We have to be open to that.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good point. And maybe we ought to pray that we would have somebody like a Nathan who can come and hold the mirror up to us and show us at times, hey, you know what, you're kind of being hard to deal with here.
Yeah. I mean, that has happened to me.
Right.
And
often, by the way, our wives can serve that function.
Yes.
Which is a fantastic thing. Yeah. Don't resist that.
I'm part of preacher groups on Facebook sometimes. Yeah. And I see the brethren say, well, on the way home from church the other day, my wife, she said, the point that you made, I never thought about that before. And it's really helped me in my relationship to God. And I'll usually say, here, my wife gives me feedback too. She usually says, that's not the way you pronounce that word. Right. And, but in all seriousness, no one knows us better than our spouse.
Right.
And we need to be open to that. It's hard because our wives are the ones we want to please the most. We want to be the knight in shining armor. We want to be the man with all the answers, and that's just not realistic. And we need to be open to the fact that the feedback that our wives gives us might just be exactly what we need.
Yeah, that's a good point. All right. So with that caveat in mind now, that you could be that person, let's define some terms. What do we mean, difficult brethren? Our listener didn't give us any specifics other than difficult. I think we all sort of know what we mean in an unspoken way, but it might be good to get that out there in the open for a minute.
Well, last night I was like going over these questions. I was like thinking about it, and I started writing just words, adjectives, and then it became a really long list. But there could be different. There's different kinds of difficult brethren. You have some that are just plain divisive and contentious. They, they're not a patient person. They're not kind. You got some that are like that. Then you got people that are cliquish.
Oh yeah.
You got people that are cliquish in the church. I'm not going to show any sort of real compassion or interest in you. I'm not going to reach out to you because you're not part of my clique, and that can hurt. You got brethren that are high maintenance. You need, if you did not call me last week to wish me happy birthday. Why didn't you do that? I wanted to shake your hand after the services, and you were not there because you were talking with someone else. Why weren't you up in the auditorium shaking people's hands? Things like that, high maintenance, and really all that. And that comes down to selfish too. You have brethren who really it's all about them. You they might look at the preacher as a hired hand, and therefore, I'm the customer, and so it's my contribution that's paying your salary, and so you need to heed me. And if you don't, then I'm going to talk to your manager. Otherwise, the elders.
Yeah, right.
There's immature brethren, and there's brethren that are immature, and for lack of a better way to say this, they should be immature because they're new converts.
Okay.
And, maybe that's not the right way to say it, but you understand that they're babes in Christ, and so they just need time to grow. But you also have brethren that are they've been in the church longer than you've been alive, and they're still immature. I'm reminded of the qualification for a deacon where it says that he not be double-tongued. And there are some brethren that are duplicitous in that way. Gossips. When I was a young preacher, I think my second year, I went to visit a member of the church, and I was in their house, and they had just placed membership at our congregation. They left another congregation nearby, and they just got out the church directory from that congregation and just went through the entire directory, family by family, telling me exactly their thoughts on all of them. And I need to watch out for this one and that one. They're gossips.
Wow.
That's something that preachers deal with, and preachers need to have wisdom in how they deal with that.
Right.
You have some brethren that are caught up in error, doctrinal error, and they're convinced that maybe they're trying to merge Genesis with Darwinism, or maybe they are very ecumenical. Maybe they've been influenced by some of the popular preachers in the evangelical field that have teach some biblical truth, but then they teach other things that aren't, but they're just so enamored with them that they want to push that. You have brethren that are like Diotrephes too. He wanted to be first. He wanted to have the preeminence. It has to be my way all the time, and my way is always right. You got brethren that are like Absalom. Absalom, he stole the hearts of the people, I believe the verse says. He was hanging out at the gate and he was willing to get a following because he wanted to get the power, and he knew that if he had the people on his side, you get the power. So you got charismatic brethren that they want to challenge the elders, or they want to challenge the preacher. They want a different preacher, and so they're going to try to get people that will back them up on that. Hot-tempered. You got brethren that lose their temper. You got to walk on eggshells around them. You got some who are narcissistic. You have some that are impatient, not considerate. And I think really, I could go on and on, but I think it comes down to two things, really, when all is said and done. No matter what kind of difficult brethren you're talking about, they are basically biblically illiterate when it comes to either the Bible as a whole, or maybe they are familiar with the Bible, but not with the teachings of the Bible that they are contradicting, that they are not following.
Okay, yeah.
And the main other thing is they're not following the golden rule. Treat others the way you would want to be treated.
Right.
It takes a conscious effort to do that, but I think there are some brethren that just don't make that connection about themselves.
Yeah. Do you think, on the whole, if people know better, then they'll do better?
If they want to.
There you go. That's a good response.
If they want to. That really comes down to it.
Right. You're right. The list goes on, and it just strikes me like I have jokingly said over the years in ministry, now for me, I call this job security. It's like, if everybody were perfect, then, perhaps the need for preaching, I say this tongue in cheek,
right,
there would be no need for preaching if everyone were perfect. And of course, we're talking about a purely hypothetical situation that could never, ever come to be. But it's interesting. Dealing with, let's shift gears now. We've talked about difficult and what that means. It is important that we learn to deal with brothers and sisters in Christ. Why, or where should we go with this? Shifting gears from the difficult part to the dealing with part. We do need to do something to make sure that we are, quote unquote, dealing with them. Although that phrase may be a little more crass or crude maybe than what biblically we ought to do. Thoughts, comments here as I stumble over my own words. Where do we need to go?
How about interact?
There you go. Okay. Yeah. Because what we don't need to do is alienate or just ignore, pretend like those people aren't there, which for some of our temperaments, myself, I'm one of these. It's just easier for me to just sort of overlook them sometimes, or to just kind of ignore them. I don't want to upset the apple cart, and so I really don't want to have that interaction with them. It doesn't make my day necessarily any better sometimes to interact with them, but we're called to something higher than that.
I think that with some, you basically do just overlook.
Yeah.
And I remember, to give an analogy, I was studying with a potential convert early in my ministry, and we went to a IHOP.
Okay.
And so he came from a denominational background, and he was very open. He loved the truth, and so we were having Bible study, and he would just be asking questions about what he had been taught, and I would just take him to the Bible. Well, we were in a booth, and across the aisle there was another booth, and there was a lady sitting there. And apparently she was listening, and she did not like what she was hearing.
Oh.
And so she interrupted us. And she looked at me and she said, "How dare you tell this person that what they believe religiously is wrong? You should be ashamed of yourself." And I said, "Well, ma'am, I appreciate you saying that. Would you like to join our discussion? We'd love to talk to you." And she didn't say yes, and she didn't say no either. She said, that's what she said. And
what do you even do with that?
Well, here's what happened, though. When she did that, when she made that noise of disapproval, lightning came out of the sky and struck me, and I died. But not really. It didn't happen. Now, my friend looked like he was about to die.
Right.
He was like, check, please. You know?
Yeah. I'm out of here.
But, we got up and headed to the front, and I took out my business card and I looked at her and I said, ma'am, I preach at the Belleville Church of Christ right down the road, and love to have you worship. Here's my business card. And she just yanked that thing out of my hand. She took my whole arm with it, and I died of blood loss. But that didn't happen either.
Right.
Here's what did happen. What happened is that I walked out of that restaurant and I never saw that lady again. And her disapproval did not impact my life in any way. I was still saved by the grace of God. At the time, I was engaged, and I was still engaged, and I still had food on my plate. I still had a roof over my head. God was still blessing me.
Wow.
And I think that when we're dealing with difficult brethren, in order for us to do what you're talking about, which is sometimes that is exactly what we need to do, is just overlook it. To help us overlook it, we need to step back and look at the bigger picture and focus on the blessings of God.
Wow.
And say, this person's disapproval, their criticism, their contentiousness, it is only impacting my life as much as I allow it to.
Oh, wow.
And it's hard for us to do that. We have to consciously choose to do that. So I would suggest that, what you were saying, overlooking it, you have to do that a lot. Now, there are times when you can't, though. There are times when you need that you're going to have to interact with them in a way that's more than just overlooking. In Ephesians chapter 4, first 3 verses, it says, I, therefore, a prisoner for the Lord, urge you to walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called, with all humility and gentleness, with patience, bearing with one another in love, eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit in the bond of peace. And this passage right here really gives us some pointers. Like, notice, he walk in a manner worthy of the calling to which you have been called. God called us through the gospel. The gospel is the good news of salvation. It's made us Christians, God's family. God has adopted us. We have the inheritance of heaven. We are part of his family. We must walk in a way that is worthy of the name Christian. So how do you do that when you're dealing with difficult brethren? Well, humility, he says, verse 2, humility. Again, going back to our first point, is there any truth in what this person is saying about me? And if there is, no matter how minor it might be, or how much it grates on me, I need to acknowledge that. There was a sister in Christ one time that she responded to the invitation, and I came up and after and when it was all over, I hugged her and I said, I'm praying for you, and my door is always open. And she said, well, she just said, it surprises me that you would say that. And, people were waiting to talk to her. So I went on, but I waited until everyone had left and she was on her way out. And then I just walked up to her. She was walking down the stairs. So I took her hand to help her down the stairs. And I said, could I just ask you what you meant by that? And she said, well, I got the feeling that you don't like me very much. And so I said, I'm glad that you told me that, because that is not the truth, but I am sorry that I gave you that impression, but I'm telling you right now that that's not true. I hold you in high regard, and I'm going to examine myself now and make sure that when I interact with you, that I do so in a better way. I apologize for giving you that impression. Well, she appreciated that. But Jon Mitchell initially, well, I'm surprised she would say that. She says, oh no, well, that's your problem. What is this? I'm encouraging you and you just say that to me. Well, you have to choose to be humble. Why? She's a soul that Jesus died for. I'm her preacher. I'm preaching the word of God, but there's this stumbling block now. There's this stumbling block that I was not aware of. Her soul matters. Is she not heeding what I'm saying from the pulpit? And because of this stumbling block, is there a way that I can take this stumbling block out of the way? Well, maybe I just need to talk to her and be humble enough to hear and heed whatever she says to me. And if that will make the difference to bring her closer to heaven, then that's what I got to do. And we have to think along those lines. Take Paul said, set your mind on the things above. Well, we need to look at things like this from the eternal perspective. This person has a soul that Jesus died for. What can I do? And maybe there's nothing you can do. Maybe they are completely unreasonable and you will never please them. But first, you have to at least examine yourself to see if it's possible.
Wow.
And he goes on to talk about gentleness and patience. This also goes back to examining yourself, because preachers, if we are honest with ourselves, how many shortcomings and weaknesses and sins in our own life do we have, and have we had, and how long have we been struggling with it? How long have we allowed that to remain in our life? And you talked about your wife. What are our wives putting up with us? Well, and how long have they been doing it? But they're doing it. They're patient. Well, we need to be patient. We need to be patient with others. Preach the word with long suffering, with patience. It takes time for people to change.
Yes.
But if we are eager to maintain the unity of the Spirit and the bond of peace, that's very important to us. Then, as Paul said in Romans 12, verse 8, as much as depends on you, be at peace with all men. Whatever we can do to make the situation better, we will do it. And when we have tried our level best and the brother or sister is still difficult, well, then we've done what God wants us to do, and we'll continue to do what God wants us to do.
Yeah.
And they will. That's between them and God.
Wow. I love that perspective. It reminded me, and I don't want to use flippantly the term fool. What you said earlier, Proverbs 26. In verses 4 and 5, it's almost like he contradicts himself. We know he's not. Answer not a fool, 26:4, according to his folly, lest you be like him yourself. And then verse 5 says, answer a fool according to his folly, lest he be wise in his own eyes. So there's a time to be quiet when reacting to another who is acting in a way that is not Christ-like. And then there's a time when we ought to engage and respond to the person who is not acting in a way that is Christ-like. And that I think there's a principle there at the very least that's related to our discussion. I love the thoughts and from Ephesians 4, when you're saying, okay, at the end of the day, even if this person has this conception of me that isn't accurate, it's more about them and their soul and making sure that they don't have that stumbling block than it is about me and me defending my honor and saying, well, what did I do to make you feel that way? I didn't do anything. Why would you do that? I love that focus that you've got there. That's really neat. I think that maybe leads us to the next question, which is, what's the end goal when we're talking about dealing with difficult brethren? And I guess with this question, what I'm getting at is what do we need to keep in mind? I mean, maybe this is hard to maintain the right focus, because in the heat of the moment, maybe adrenaline is flowing, or, whatever it is, that it's like, this person, their difficulty is grating on my nerves at this exact moment. But if we keep an end goal in mind, something that we're working toward, it might help a little bit. What's that goal, do you think?
I think there are two answers to this question. I'm going to focus on the end goal for you as a preacher and your ministry, first of all. Number one, if you do what God has told you to do, you are eager to maintain the unity, you are gentle, you are humble, you are patient, you are going to do your best to set the proper example, then number one, you're saving your soul in a sense. And I know that God saves our soul, but Jesus is the source of eternal salvation to all who obey him. You're obeying God.
Yeah.
And so that is benefiting you. But it's not just benefiting you. Robert, you know that as preachers, we are in the limelight.
Mm-hmm.
We are the public face of the congregation, and we are center stage.
Right.
So that means people were watching. And that means that when we are dealing with difficult brethren, people are watching.
Mm.
You're in that lobby and you're dealing with that contentious person.
Mm-hmm.
The other people in the lobby, they are watching. And then what they're going to do is they're going to go and they're going to say, brother so-and-so gave Robert a problem today. But then here's what they might say. Well, I was watching Robert. Man alive, he just handled that with grace. You know, he handled that in a really mature way. And I got to say, I admire that. I admire that about Robert. It's an example to me. It's something that I wish I could do. I need to be able to do that. And guess what? You don't even know it.
Right.
But just by your example, you're letting your light shine. Others can see your good works and glorify your Father in heaven, keeping your conduct among the Gentiles honorable, so that when they speak against you as evil doers, they may see your good works and they can glorify God on the day of visitation. You are having a positive impact on others by your example. Preachers are told, set the believers an example in faith, in love, and conduct. You know, this is what that's all about. And in fact, in 1 Timothy 4, you'll remember that verse 12 is when he says, set the believers an example. In verses 15 and 16, he says something very interesting. He talks about how all can see your progress. And when you are dealing with difficult brethren in a mature, Christ-like way, people will see your progress. And then the next verse, by heeding what God has told you to do, by practicing these things, you are saving yourself and those who hear you. There was a brother that in a minor way, in a one-time way, he was difficult. He came up to me, and this was in front of an elder. Okay, he came up to me and he says, all right, I got just one thing I gotta say to you, one problem. Love your preaching, just got one thing. I was like, okay.
Where is this going?
And he said, you usually bring up, you say, well, this is what this word says in this verse. And, in the Greek, it means this. Well, you know what? I don't know Greek. And so, I prefer just plain old English. And keep in mind, I'm not a Greek scholar, and I'm not like Dan Winkler, where he'll just break down every syllable of the. I mean, I'm not that way. I try not to say the Greek word because I will mispronounce it.
So you're not overwhelming people with Greek.
I'll just say, now here's what this means in the original word. Well, but he was challenging me. And so I looked at him and I smiled and I said, well, brother, I appreciate you telling me that. Tell you what, the next time I do that, you just focus on that English word in your Bible, and then in about 2 seconds, it'll be all over and you can get back to the sermon. Good. And he grinned at me, and I clapped him on the shoulder, and I turned away, and I turned towards the elder and briefly made eye contact with the elder, and the elder just gave me a small smile and a nod of his head, like, good job.
Yeah.
And
those subtle nonverbals mean so much,
yes,
don't they, in those moments? Yeah.
Yes. But you see, and I'll tell you the end of the story. The next day, brother comes up to me and he said, you know what? I've been thinking I wanted to apologize to you for saying that. And I was like, don't even worry about it.
Yeah.
It's no problem. No problem. We all just have different things we're looking for.
Right.
I made it clear to him that I was that I was hearing what he was saying. I was not going to kowtow to him on something like this.
Sure.
I also made it clear to him that he was still my friend. He was still my brother. I loved him. I was not offended. And he was able to see that. The other person who was listening to the conversation was able to see that. And I think it had a positive impact on my ministry for that. All may see your progress.
Wow.
So that's the first answer to your question. What's the end goal for dealing with difficult brethren? Think about the impact of how you interact with them will have an impact on your own salvation, and it will also have an impact on your ministry and on how seriously people take you from what you say in the pulpit.
Yeah.
All right, number 2, 2 Timothy 2, verses 24 through 26. Lord's servant must not be quarrelsome, argumentative. Okay, so it takes 2 to argue. And you're dealing with a difficult brother. They might want to argue with you. Yeah. Well, don't be argumentative. Not if you want to be the Lord's servant. So if you refuse to argue, then that argument's not going to happen. Disagreement might still be there, but you're not going to have an argument.
Wow.
So the Lord's servant must not be argument, but must be kind to all, able to teach. He mentions patience. He mentions gentleness, with gentleness correcting those who are in opposition. And you got the verse pulled up. What is the end goal? What does he say is the specific reason to be this way?
Yeah. God may perhaps grant them repentance leading to a knowledge of the truth, that they may come to their senses and escape the snare of the devil after being captured by him to do his will.
That's the end goal right there. And
wow.
Preachers, again, is easy to have pride because, again, you got difficult brethren, but you got brethren coming up to you every day, shaking your hand. Great sermon, powerful sermon.
Yeah.
You're the man. Well,
in the good way.
Yeah, in the good way. Well, that's encouraging to get that positive feedback. It is.
Yeah.
But you know what? It can lead to pride. Well, I just can't be wrong. I can't be wrong. I know more than them. I'm the preacher. They're out there working their white collar and blue collar jobs throughout the week, and I'm studying the Bible. I know more about the Bible than they do. So here's someone that's arguing with me. Well, you know what? I got the Bible on my side. They don't. So you know what? I'm just going to use this as a hammer, and I'm just going to, my goal is to win this argument, to show them that I am right and they are wrong, and I am better than them. I am holier than them. I'm more mature than them. Well, if you have that mindset, guess what? You're not any of those things in the sight of God. You are actually right there on their level, or maybe even below them.
That's right.
But if you have as your goal, okay, I'm going to deal with this person with Christ-like wisdom and love, and the reason I'm doing it, the only reason I'm doing it, the goal I have for every single decision I make with this person is to bring them closer to heaven, and that's it. I don't care about winning the argument. I don't care about becoming getting a higher stance in their eyes. I want to save their soul as much as depends on me. And if you have that as your mindset, then it'll be easier for you. So, okay, I feel myself losing my temper. That they're really irritating. I can't believe they're this petty. I mean, they're who cares about this criticism? I mean, and plus, didn't they hear the rest of what I said? I mean, come on. I just can't believe they're like this. Well, step back and say it's not about this. Okay, they are caught in Satan's trap. How can I help them to get out? So I'm frustrated. I feel myself losing my temper. If I lose my temper, though, then that is going to turn them off to anything that they hear from this pulpit, from me, for the foreseeable future. And if they are not listening to the word of God, which I preach, then they're not worshiping in spirit and truth. They are sinning against God, and God's going to hold them accountable on the day of judgment. And I will have had a hand in that because I was this stumbling block to them, a legitimate stumbling block. I lost my temper with them. So I'm gonna step back, maybe because I feel myself, my solar plexus is tightening. I feel my face getting red. I think I'm about to lose my temper. So what I'm gonna do right now, I'm just gonna say, brother, I appreciate you telling me that, and then I'm gonna walk away. I'm gonna walk away I'm going to go off by myself. I'm going to approach God in prayer about it. Am I really upset? Do I need to punch something like the steering wheel or a wall? I'm going to make sure that no one can see me do it. If I need to vent, then I'm going to do it to God. I'm going to do it by myself, because I'm not going to do something that would cause this person the vice that Satan has around their ankle, that bear trap. I'm not going to do anything to cause that vice to get tighter. I'm going to do everything I can to loosen that vice. And maybe I can't.
Wow.
Maybe I can't myself, because in the end, it's their decision.
Right.
In the end, they have to change. But I'm going to do everything I can to influence them to do that. That's the end goal.
Wow. Several challenges in there for us, even as we engage that. I appreciate that so much. We've talked, I think, around all of this. We've mentioned several things already, but just as we sort of land the plane here on this episode, what tips do you have? How can we bridge the gap that exists between us and them? Maybe to be proactive in working toward those end goals, or just to yoke everything together that we've said in a summation sort of way today.
Well, what did Jesus tell us to do? Matthew 5, 23 and 24. If you are approaching the altar, in other words, you're about to worship, you remember your brother has something against you. Well, go take care of it.
Wow.
Don't put it off. And if your brother sins against you, you go to him in private. Matthew 18, verse 15. We have to take the initiative. Again, that lady. Well, I'm surprised you'd say that, because, well, why would she say that? I could have just let that go and not even, instead I took the initiative. I walked up to her. What did you mean by that? And then we were able to resolve it right then and there. So take the initiative, number one. Also, love them. And think about preachers. I mean, what does love mean? Agape. It's putting their interests before your own. It's that self-sacrificial type of love. So preachers, we talk about love all the time. Well, here's your chance to practice what you preach. Love them, not just in word, which means, by the way, you should tell them that you love them. It's amazing. It's amazing what that could do, just simply saying that to them. But love them not only in word, love them in deed. Philippians 2, you'll remember verses 1 through 5. If there's any fellowship, if there's any comfort, any of these good traits, what must you do? You must be like-minded. Well, how are you like-minded? Then keep reading. Don't look out only for your own interest, but also for the interest of others. Put them before yourself and have that mindset, because guess what? That's the same mindset that Christ had about you. Look for the good. And here's a challenge I have for the listeners. 1st and 2nd Corinthians. What just came to your mind when I said that? 1st and 2nd Corinthians. It was, Paul's laying the hammer down.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. He was telling them like it is. Well, all right. Why don't you go and read 1st and 2nd Corinthians and decide not to read all the parts where he was bringing them the rod and he was rebuking them and saying, and in 2nd Corinthians chapters 10 through 12, where he got so sarcastic. All right. Why don't you avoid those? And why don't you focus on the rest of the book? Because in the rest of the book, guess what he was doing? He was actually bringing up their good traits.
Yeah.
He was praising them. Hey, Corinth, I've been bragging about you. Do you know that? I've been telling other people what a great church you are. Corinth, can you believe he'd say that? Right. But he was. Hey, Corinth, good job on the giving. I've been bragging about you. Hey, and guess what? Great job on how you handled Titus when Titus came to visit you. I told him that you guys would treat him right. And guess what? You proved me right. I'm so proud of you. Good job. Look for the good in the difficult brethren and acknowledge that to them. Praise them for that. Thank you for all you do for the church. Thank you specifically for this thing. Also, stay calm. Stay calm. A soft answer turns away wrath. A harsh word stirs up anger. Always stay calm. And here's a way that helps me. Every time I have not done this, I have not stayed calm. And every time I have done this, I've stayed calm.
Oh.
And here's what it is. It's kind of like that, what I did with that lady in the IHOP. What this person is doing has no real impact on my eternity unless I allow it.
Mm-hmm.
Unless I allow it. And really, our lives too. Well, John, what if the difficult person's an elder? Well, now we're talking job security. You know what? That just may happen. But you know what? You will still God will still take care of you. And plus you'll still have a family that loves you. You still have all these other blessings. Focus on all that God is doing for you, and focus on the fact that when all is said and done, you're going to heaven. So don't allow yourself to lose your temper. Stay calm. Okay. Ignore the insults. Proverbs 12, verse 16, Proverbs 20, verse 3, Proverbs 17, verse 14. Ignore the insults. Overlook it. I mean, and I know that's hard to do. Oh, they just said something crass and biting at my expense. I understand that human nature is that hurts. But at the same time, again, in the big picture, the fact that they just made a joke at your expense and put you down, what impact did that have on your life, really? Was your wife standing there, and did she say, "Oh, wow, you're right.
Never thought of that before.
This insult is completely correct. This marriage is over." No. That didn't happen. Did your kids, did they just say, "Hey, you know what? We're taking his side, Dad"? No. And did the fact of this insult, did it change the fact that you're going to heaven? I mean, they insulted Christ while they were killing him. By the way, the difficult brethren, are they killing you literally, physically? No, they're not. So what did Jesus do? For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, despising the shame. This is shaming me, these insults from the soldiers and the Pharisees. But you know what? I'm just casting that away. That doesn't matter to me. I'm going to go through with this because it's going to save souls. The joy set before him. Focus on the joy set before you. Ignore the insults because it does not impact your eternity unless you let it. And finally, one last thing. Titus 3, verses 9 through 11. Do not get involved in foolish controversies and foolish discussions and contentions. But then also, what did he say? When you are dealing with a contentious person, after warning them for the first time and then the second time, have nothing more to do with them. If this should be the last resort, if you have given it all, you have exhausted everything that you can do. And by the way, it takes a long time to do this because you're supposed to be patient, right?
Yeah.
So, well, I gave it a week, and so no.
Yeah.
Why not give it 5 years? Why not give it 3 years? Why not give it a long time? Because it takes time for people to change. It takes time for you to change, preacher. But if it just cannot happen, then avoid them. Have whatever interaction you have with them, let it be just necessary, and then avoid them.
Wow. Yeah. Several people have told me this season that they have gone back and listened multiple times to the same episode just to mine the nuggets from our guests that we've had on. And I think, brother, this is going to be one of those episodes that I personally go back and listen to again, and that maybe several of our listeners might appreciate doing that as well. It's been so practical, challenging, but in a good way. Thank you for the time you've put into this and for challenging us in these ways too. It means a lot.
Well, thank you for having me on. Yeah. This is a relevant topic, unfortunately,
right.
But it is.
Yeah.
And just know this, everything that you've heard me say, I'm saying it to myself.
That's the way it works.
You have to consciously do this. And preachers, just remember this too. You're not going to have all this down pat.
Right.
You're not going to have all this down pat. It could be that tomorrow, Jon Mitchell, after saying all this on this podcast, tomorrow, Jon Mitchell might just mess up.
Just get it wrong. Yeah.
But you know what? The beauty of Christianity is that if we repent and we keep trying to do better according to the guidelines of Scripture, God will forgive us and He will bless us. He will bless us with more than forgiveness. He will bless us with a more abundant life here as well. And that includes easing the difficult brethren and how we deal with them.
Wow, I love it. Thank you for being a part of this edition of Preachers in Training. Quick reminder that our website, thelightnetwork.tv, is where you can find episode archives from this podcast, as well as all the other podcasts that are available from the Light Network, thelightnetwork.tv. We love to hear from you. Preachers at thelightnetwork.tv is our email address, or join the Facebook group so that you can offer some feedback that way. And if you have an episode idea, we'd love to hear from you. Hit that subscribe button so you never miss an episode. Brand new episodes release every Thursday from our podcast partners and on YouTube as well, and also on our website. Hey, thanks for being a part of this edition. Thank you, brother, again for being on this episode. And until next time, let's go preach the word.